The skies had never looked so dark. We thought it was just a storm when the transport ship began to shudder. Panels blinked out, gravity lurched, and a siren that hadn't sounded in centuries began screaming. Our pilot tried to stabilize us, but nothing could fight the magnetic pull from the unknown planetary body that had appeared below us, a green, jagged swirl of land rising out of an ocean black as ink. We didn't crash. We were placed, set down gently like fragile glass. The ship rested on the only patch of open earth, surrounded by a thick wall of trees with glowing leaves and tall, stone-like growths that looked suspiciously ranged. Like teeth, this isn't on any chart, muttered Jonar, the last scout pilot left in our crew. We should report. A groaning sound rose beneath us. Then came silence. No animal sounds, no wind. Just the slow, thunderous breath of something vast, something alive, as if the island itself exhaled beneath us. That we stepped out into the warm, syrupy air. The sky had turned gold, though no sun was visible. I counted 12 of us. Technicians, medics, scholars, one soldier, and me. I had been a xenocultural analyst once. Now I was just trying to make sense of the trees, which seemed to shift. When no one was looking, it began with footprints. Huge ones, sunk deep into the mud like bowls, some still warm. And not just one set. They circled our drop site, too wide for even the largest known fauna. Jonar called them nesting patterns. But what nested in something that size? By nightfall, the lights on the ship were failing. I'm telling you, it's hurting us, whispered Selah, the linguist. The way the terrains shifted, there was no ridge here this morning. I mapped it. It's grown. Or moved. We made camp with whatever supplies hadn't melted in the crash. Our food rations were intact. Our hopes were not. And then we heard it. The roar. It wasn't close. That was the worst part. It sounded distant, yet the ground trembled as if it stood right beside us. A low, resonating sound that rolled over the island like a tidal wave, shaking trees, breaking branches, and cutting the moonlit silence in half. People began to panic. I saw 2 of the scholars, Bran and Taya, quietly gather their things and head into the woods. They never came back. The next day, the monsters came, not the one that roared. No, these were its playthings. We saw them crawling from the forest. Things with long, grasping limbs and translucent skin, bearing teeth like fishhooks. They didn't attack immediately. They circled, observed, studied us the way we studied insects. By the 3rd night, for people had vanished, we started to see messages scratched into bark, in languages we couldn't identify, warnings, perhaps, or taunts. We tried to leave. The ship wouldn't respond. It felt like the island had grown over it, rooted through its hull, and made it part of itself. And then the giant returned. We didn't see it, not fully, just the eye. It opened behind the clouds, a single, golden slit, larger than our ship, blinking slowly from the mist. The jungle bowed in its direction. The monsters fell silent. The air grew thick with fear and awe, and I heard it speak, not with words, with feeling, with weight. You are not prisoners. You are chosen. Jonar tried to fire his pulse rifle at the clouds. It exploded in his hands. The giant saw everything, and it was not alone. That night, Selah and I made a pact: survive or find the heart of this place and end it. We kissed without speaking. I think we both thought it might be the last night we'd have lips to kiss with. Morning came with silence, and a trail of bone-white petals leading away from camp. We followed them to a throne made of wrecked ships, shattered dreams, and bones that didn't belong to anything human. We were not the first. We would not be the last. But we were the only ones it had spoken to, and something deep inside me knew it had plans for us. By the 2nd day, it was clear they weren't alone. Jace limped ahead, a makeshift spear in hand. The crash had shattered his ankle, but he refused to stop. They needed food. More than that, they needed answers. The ship was destroyed. No signal got through. The planet's atmosphere swallowed transmissions, and the island, it shifted. Paths they took yesterday no longer existed. The beach curved differently every morning. Cliffs rose and fell like tides. But the worst part wasn't the land. It was the creatures. The first one they saw looked like an overgrown panther with insect legs. crawling low behind the trees. Nira spotted it just before nightfall, its eyes glowing like molten amber. It didn't attack. It watched. That night, they found markings near the wreck, massive footprints, talon-deep gouged in the sand, and something stranger, a circular pattern, carved into the earth, perfectly symmetrical. It's not just animals, Jace whispered. There's intent. Nira agreed. Something had brought them here. The crash hadn't been random. The ship's instruments had failed just as they passed over this island. On the third morning, they met someone, a woman barefoot, her skin pale from lack of sun. She stepped out of the forest wearing scraps of alien cloth and holding a bone knife. Her eyes were sharp, untrusting. "You don't speak," Nira said, holding up empty hands. The woman didn't respond. Instead, she turned and gestured. A warning or an invitation. They followed. She led them through tangled growth until the trees parted, revealing an impossible sight. Dozens of survivors, humans, aliens, all living in silence beneath the canopy, huddled around stone pillars covered in glowing glyphs. The woman gestured to one. "Rules," she said finally. Her voice was hoarse. "You survive by them." She pointed to a line of glyphs. Nira couldn't read them, but something in her bones understood. Don't leave the forest after sunset. Don't follow the lights. Never speak the name of the beast. Jace scoffed. What beast? That night, he found out. Something massive came to the edge of their hidden camp. It moved without sound, taller than the trees, wrapped in thick, black tendrils that pulsed with heat. It did not roar. It breathed, and when it exhaled, the leaves shook and the fires died. Nira clutched her brother's hand in the dark. The island wasn't just full of monsters. It belonged to one. The sky turned orange just before the first of the traps was discovered. Alia crouched low by the ferns, watching her breath cloud in the muggy air. The vegetation steamed from the recent rainfall, and somewhere deeper in the jungle, something let out a low, grating groan. It wasn't a sound that came from any creature she recognized. It was too deep, too hollow. It echoed like it came from inside the island itself. "The others are already dead, aren't they?" whispered Bren, standing behind her with his makeshift spear tipped in melted metal from their crashed ship. He was shaking, not just from fear but from the sound. "The island made sure you felt it in your bones." "No," Alia said flatly. "Not yet." She pointed toward the clearing. Something was wrong with the ground there. The grass moved like water when nothing was touching it. Bren squinted. Then he saw a fine net of almost invisible threads, glistening in the twilight. "Webbing. No. Muscle fiber. Living tissue," she muttered. "The island laid a trap." They didn't speak for a long moment. Then they heard a scream, short, sharp, human. It was Janek's voice. Alia ran. They found Yannick half submerged in a slit pit that hadn't been there before. His upper body thrashed, arms clawing at the roots encasing him. His lower half was missing. Something pulsed in the pit, something with too many eyes and no face. Bren pulled her back before she could dive in. "It's not just alive, it's hungry. I won't leave him," she cried. "He's already gone. Look." Janek's eyes were open, but no longer seeing. The pit slurped once and dragged him under. Gone in seconds. The forest around them reacted. Trees creaked. The sky darkened again. The island, it seemed, was watching. That night, their campfire was weak. The others, those who remained, sat in silence. "We need to signal the creature," said Mira, one of the engineers who had survived the crash. "The big one. The one that brought us here. It doesn't care." Bren said, "It fed us to this place." But why? No one had answers. Alia stayed silent. But inside, she remembered what she'd seen before the crash when the creature had blinked at her through the ship's hull. It hadn't looked cruel. It had looked lonely. Later that night, Alia left camp. She walked to the beach where their broken ship lay like a dead animal. She stepped into the surf and shouted into the sky, "Why us? Why bring us here?" There was no answer until the sea began to boil. The creature, so massive it blocked out the stars, rose from the ocean's edge. Its eye glowed like a sun. It focused on her alone. Alia raised her arms. "Then take me," she whispered. "But leave the rest." A long pause, and then the creature leaned down. A tendril touched her forehead. It was warm. Suddenly, she saw its memories. A dying world. a promise, a hunger not for food but for companionship, for meaning. It hadn't meant to kill. The island was its memory, a living echo of its home. But now it couldn't control it. You brought us here, she said aloud, so you wouldn't be alone. It blinked. Once. Behind her, the jungle roared. The island had heard her words, and it was furious. The air smelled like rust and sea brine, and the sky had turned the color of bruised peaches. As the last rays of the sun filtered through the blood-colored fog that loomed over the horizon, Zarah pressed her back to a wet stone wall, panting. Her clothes were torn, soaked in salt and blood. Not all of it hers. Oren was beside her, his breathing heavy but steady. He hadn't spoken much since they lost the twins to that thing in the tide pools. Zarah wasn't sure if it was guilt or shock or both. They're still following, he whispered. Zarah's eyes narrowed. Behind the low throb of crashing waves and whispering wind, she could hear it too, the slow, sucking steps of the marrowhounds. She nodded once, then took his hand. They'd survived 3 nights on the island, but it had changed them. The monsters weren't just grotesque beasts that tore flesh. They hunted with purpose, as though under a single will. And the island, it moved, literally. Once, at dawn, they had climbed a hill to spot the shape of the island from above. The coastline had shifted, landmarks erased. Something massive slept beneath the terrain, and its breathing twisted the geography. Zarah had stopped believing in random survival. If they were still alive, it was because something allowed it. But why? They reached the mouth of the cave again. What they now called the Red Maw. Its walls pulsed faintly, like veins, and when Oren lit a glow stick, it cast eerie patterns that shifted when they looked away. Something inside the stone was watching. They weren't alone. From within the cavern came a low murmur. Not growling, not the echo of the sea. A voice. Zarah froze. I hear it too, Oren muttered. It's speaking. The words weren't in any language she knew, but they were rhythmic, like a lullaby from the womb of something ancient. The cave welcomed them. Inside, the cave widened into an underground chamber. Pools of dark water dotted the floor, and from them rose pale, glowing lilies. Beneath the largest lily sat a creature. It looked humanoid, but stretched and wrong. Limbs too long, skin glistening like opal, its head tilted as they entered. And it didn't seem surprised to see them. Human, it whispered, its voice inside their minds. You're late. Oren flinched. Zarah stepped forward. Who are you? I am the dream the island remembers, the shaper of what you call monsters. Zarah's heart pounded. Why trap us here? Not trap, invite. You woke the island when you ran from the sky beast. Now, you must decide. Flee back into the nightmare of your species, or accept my offer. It showed them visions not with words, but with raw feeling. A future where the monsters no longer hunted them, but lived beside them. The marrowhounds resting at their feet, the giant shellbacks ferrying them across oceans. Even the grotesque winged things that circled the island's skies obeying a song only Zarah could sing. It was offering dominion over the island, but at a price. Oren said. Zarah already knew. She could feel it. One of them had to stay, not just stay, become part of the island, to replace the creature before them, to hold its shape and dreams, so it could dissolve back into the mud it had risen from. The island needed a voice, and it wanted hers. I can't let you, Oren whispered, taking her hand. Zarah smiled sadly. You have to. That night, Zarah sat in the center of the glowing chamber, the lilies slowly closing around her. The creature faded into mist, leaving behind silence and a thrumming deep in her chest. Oren screamed her name as the cave collapsed behind him, forcing him back into the jungle. The fog lifted the next morning. From the beach, he looked back once and saw a new figure atop the cliffs, glowing, tall, hair flowing like seagrass in the wind. Zarah, not human anymore, but watching, guarding. The monsters no longer hunted him, they bowed. The island had a new queen, and she was waiting. The path down wasn't a tunnel, it was an artery. The further Saren went, the more her reality shifted. Memories bled from the walls. Voices whispered from the dripping stone. The very air hummed with lullabies to ancient, to decipher. At the bottom, not a chamber, but a void. The dreaming one lay coiled like a serpent, skull vast as a moon. Ion opened. Around it, shards of broken worlds orbited like debris. It wasn't just a creature, it was a prison. And something was breaking it open from within. Saren stepped forward. The ghost woman emerged beside her, no longer glowing but burning. "You must choose," she said. "Silence him, or let the song end everything." "What does it cost?" Saren asked. "Your mind," the ghost answered. "Your body may live, but not as you." Behind her, the others fought. Screams, howls, the god body of the island had begun to rise. Hills cracked open to reveal muscle. Rivers reversed into veins. Saren touched the creature's heart. She sang, a song of stillness, of memory, of sorrow. The dreaming one slowed, twitched, then slept again. The island stilled. The sky closed. The creatures collapsed like puppets with cut strings. Saren collapsed to dot when they found her days later. Her eyes glowed faint violet. She never spoke again, but every night she sang the same wordless tune. And the island never moved again. But just beyond the reef, the mist never lifted.